Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for letting us be here today. If y'all can turn on your cameras, that would be awesome. If not, no worries. It's always just good to have a name to the face. But yeah, I can introduce a little bit about myself and then pass it off to Kyle for an awesome presentation that he has planned. But for myself, I actually went to TCU. I graduated in the class of 2021. So go Frogs. And my time at TCU was amazing. It was definitely an experience to get to explore and figure out what I wanted to do. And so I'm super grateful for those 4 years that I had at TCU, not just in pursuing what I wanted to do, but also the connections and the relationships that I've been able to build there through friendships and relationships with my professors. And so, in terms of today, really this session is hopefully super helpful and inspiring to you guys. Myself and then Kyle both work at 49 Financial. Kyle definitely more years of experience and time in this business. And so I'm really excited for the presentation that he will be sharing today. And so as I pass it off to him, I just wanted to hype him up a bit. Kyle has been a huge leader and mentor to me as I've grown in this practice and learned how to build a business and serve others in financial planning. But that is only one of the hats that he wears. He is our regional managing partner of 49 Financial, so really works on the leadership development of growing leaders within our organization. But then he's also doing what all of us came into this business to do, which is make an impact. And so he has been able to serve clients with me together, as well as show me the ropes in what it means to provide clarity and peace to my clients. And so with that being said, I'll pass it off to Kyle. Thank you so much, Kyle, for being here today, and really excited for what you have to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that, Liv. And appreciate y'all taking the time. No, it's a busy season of life for y'all, and you got a lot going on and a lot you could be doing. It's 7 o'clock on a Thursday night, so we'll try to make this as interactive as possible, as entertaining as possible, but hopefully as valuable as possible. And Terrence, thank you, man, for hosting and having us with the group. So as Liv said, my name is Kyle Sims. I am one of the co-founders of this company, 49 Financial, which I'll tell you a little bit more here about in a second. But the title of the presentation we're going to be walking through tonight is called Backpacks to Briefcases. And what this is really designed to speak to is, hey, how do you take your experiences as a collegiate athlete and then begin to leverage that as you step into a life after college athletics and kind of the working world or the professional context. This is something that is of particular, I guess, impact and interest to me. I was many years ago, I was an athlete. I played football in college at Harvard University. And so I graduated in 2002 and didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that my whole life I had loved everything about sports, the competition and the team and the camaraderie and being a part of something bigger than yourself. And I always thought, if you could take that and somehow apply that to the business community and to the business world, then that's something I'd really want to be a part of. And so in 2005, I kind of had just gotten into financial advising and had this idea. For a company called 49 Financial. And the name 49, it's not a reference to a football team from the Bay Area, but rather it's a reference to an Old Testament verse, Ecclesiastes 4:9, which says, two are better than one because they receive a better return for their labor. And so we believe that that is what we do. We help clients in the areas of finance as financial advisors. We come alongside them and we literally help them get a better return for their labor. But not only that, the way that we go about doing that is everything that we do is built around team. And so when somebody steps into our organization, they're put on a team, they're a part of a team. We have client service teams, so it's never an advisor by themselves. And you've got people around them who are there to help them and to mentor them and to show them the ropes. And so we've really just tried to take that aspect of team and camaraderie and all the good things that come with it and apply it to how we go about doing business. So that's kind of my story in terms of what it's looked like for me to go from backpacks to, I still wear a backpack. I don't briefcases. I don't really do that, but the whatever the thing we're going for there. But that's really what it's about. And so my hope is that as we walk through this agenda, I'll give you a brief kind of further intro to 49, just so you know a little bit more about us. But then I think there's a few questions that you've got to kind of everybody confronts. And I think it's particularly interesting for athletes to ask themselves as they get closer to graduation and start thinking about, man, what do I want to do, with my career? Like, how do I go about figuring that out? And how do I maybe take some of the experiences that I've had as an athlete and begin to apply that to answering that question? And some of you may already have a ton of clarity on that. Some of you may be like me. When I was a senior, didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. I just knew the things I liked to do. And I wanted to try and find a way to apply that to my job. And then we'll talk a little bit about, hey, what are some ways to go about beginning to find that thing? So what are the questions to ask around what should I do? And then how do I go find that thing in my search? And then lastly, avoiding the traps. So at 49, our average age of our employee is about 26 years old. I am a senior citizen at 49 as a 42-year-old. So we're a really, really young company. And we see 20-year-olds, 20-somethings come into our company. We've got a couple hundred folks that are part of what we do. And I think that there's some common traps that people fall into, whether in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, or whatever. There's some traps that are easy to fall into as you make the transition from kind of the college world into the working world. And so that's kind of the closing section is, hey, what are some of those traps that we see people fall into? And what are some thoughts and some ideas navigating those and working through those? So that's what we'll do. If there's anything here as we go through this that you're like, hey, could you unpack that a little bit further? I'd like to know more. Feel free, drop a question in the chat. I can't see the chat, so I'll rely on Liv in case we get any questions in the chat. Or just take yourself off mute. Doesn't matter if you get a bunch of background noise, no big deal. And feel free to ask. Like I said, would much rather this be a dialogue to the extent we can do that versus a monologue. Because as my kids tell me, that gets old real fast. All right, let's talk a little bit about 49. So I already told you the name in terms of the origin of our name. So I won't spend a ton of time on who we are, because that's not really what we're here to talk about, but I think it's helpful for a little bit of context. We are a values-based, comprehensive financial advising firm. What does that mean? So when we sit down with clients, we lead with our values, and everybody talks about their values, right? And you're a values-based company, but this is something that is foundational to who we are, especially in the world of finance, because what we do is we help clients make financial decisions. And the reality is there's a lot of financial decisions that don't necessarily fit on an Excel spreadsheet. There's no model for it. And when you think about decision making, values inform so much of the decisions you make. And so we help clients think through, hey, should I take this job? Should we buy this house? How should we save for the kids' college? Do we have enough money to retire? How are we going to pay for that wedding? All of these types of things. And so we recommend to our clients to say, hey, listen, whether it's us or somebody else, we think it's important that you work with somebody with whom your values align, because ideally your advisor is designed to help step into some of those decisions with you and be a sounding board. And so these are our values: teamwork, which I've already talked about, gratitude, loyalty, excellence, and authenticity. And every time we sit down with a client or we talk in a context like this, we always lead with this because it is the foundation that we're built on. So what do? We help our clients in several different areas. These are a lot of them if you're able to see the screen. We help our clients with investment management, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, retirement accounts, risk management, which is life insurance, long-term care insurance, things of that nature. Help them with their taxes, really trying to help them save money on their taxes. A lot of our clients are very philanthropically inclined. And they're big donors and big givers, some of them to their universities, others to other things that they are committed to. And so we help them do that in the most tax efficient way possible and be incredibly strategic with how they utilize their giving. Many of our clients are business owners, and so we help them kind of the interplay between their individual finances and their business. And then lastly, estate planning, which is helping think through, okay, how are they going to pass wealth on? We work with clients at every stage of their financial journey. So we have clients that are young families just getting started and trying to build a foundation, all the way to we serve families that are close to the billions in terms of asset size, athletes, celebrities, things of this nature that we serve as well, and everything in between. We believe regardless of where somebody is in their journey, they benefit from having a guide. And that's our hope, is to be able to come alongside and guide them in that journey. All right. Last slide on 49. This shows you where we are. So we are one of the fastest growing financial services companies in our industry. On the left is a couple of articles. There's a number of articles that have been written about 49. And so the thing that is particularly interesting to a lot of people in our industry is just how young we are. One of the challenges our industry has had is, it's kind of an older industry. So a lot of, not there's anything wrong with gray hair, Terrence. I got a little myself, but a lot of gray hair in our industry. And so we're kind of a fresh face. Like I said, our average age is a little over 26 years old. And we are in 8 cities. Liv is out in LA. And then we've got the other offices kind of coast to coast. And we're growing. We continue to launch new offices across the country. So that's a little bit about 49, just so you know who we are as I begin to dive into this. Now, let's talk about the bulk of what we're here to talk about. Answering the question, what do I do? And while I can't tell you, exactly what to do, I think that hopefully give you some guidance and some questions to ask as you seek to answer that bigger question. And so there's really 3 things that we'll talk about. Oh, I see some. Okay, awesome. There's really 3 things that we'll talk about in this. And one is look in. The second is look out. And then the third is look up. So look in, look out, look up. So look in. What do I mean by that? So this guy named Dan Sullivan, he wrote a book called Unique Ability. And what he said is that everybody has something that is specific to them that they are uniquely gifted at. And so it's a matter of kind of introspection, hence look in. And so you can see here, what are the ways that you're uniquely gifted with talents and abilities others would identify as specific to you? That's the way he says to begin to look at what is it that is unique in the way that you are gifted. And so these things are things that you've demonstrated superior skill in historically. They give you passion, energy. And because of that, because you enjoy doing them, you can continuously do it. And it's kind of this feedback loop that, hey, I'm good at this, so I like it. And so I'm going to keep doing it. And so I keep getting better and better and better. For several of our kids during COVID, this was a lot of video games. And they got pretty good at it. And I did too. But anyway, point is, that is the idea behind unique ability. Now, how do you, begin to discover your unique ability? Well, for that, feel free to read that book, Unique Ability. But a couple of things are looking in your past, like what are the ways in which you have excelled? And maybe it's leadership. Maybe it's a particular subject matter. If you're gifted in math, science, whatever the case may be. So it's kind of looking at your history and say, hey, what is it that I've enjoyed doing? And what is it that I've excelled at? And then asking other people, because it's amazing that a lot of times you can be good at something and you don't even realize it, but other people can see it in you. But to you, it's just a natural thing. But other people kind of look at it like, wow, you're really good at that particular thing. So for me personally, I knew I love being a part of a team and being a team player. I knew that I was very entrepreneurial. I really liked, and I'd always done entrepreneurial things. And then I like working with people. And that was about it coming out of school. I didn't know much more than that, but I knew at least those three things. And that began to give me some clues as to, okay, what should I do? So first, look in. Any questions on this? It's pretty self-explanatory, I know, but happy to unpack this any further if there are any questions. All right. Next, look out. So this is the question of what is a human need that is present in culture, society that you are particularly passionate about? And it could be a lot of different things. Maybe it's justice. Maybe it's medicine. Maybe it's emotional health. Maybe it's health and fitness, finance, art, serving communities that are underserved, right? Extending, opportunities to people that maybe live on the margins and the underprivileged, whatever the case may be. What are some of those things that you find yourself particularly interested in? And if there's a way that you can connect your skills and your abilities to the things that you are passionate about, you begin to get a little bit closer to that sweet spot we'll see here in just a second. So go back just for me personally, right? It's, looking at those things, enjoy working with people. Just a lot of, excuse me, personally, caring a lot about people kind of who are underserved, growing up in a little bit more of a blue collar, a little bit of more of an inner city type of environment. That's something that's always been super sensitive to me. And then helping to equip and empower entrepreneurs is something that's been personal to me. I'm passionate about those things, right? But everybody has something. And so I think beginning to ask yourself those questions is a starting point, and it hopefully, again, will begin to give you clues as to what are you passionate about and how do you begin to marry that with some of your skills and your abilities. And then lastly, look up. And so this is really oriented around a sense of like almost like a sense of calling or purpose, right? So Simon Sinek wrote a book called Start With Why. This book's been out now for probably 15 years or so. One of the most viewed TED Talks. If you may have heard of it, if you haven't, I highly encourage you to go watch this. It's really, really good. And basically, he says that people don't care what you do, they care why you do it. And so one of his quotes here is, regardless of what we do in our lives, our why, our driving purpose, that never changes, right? So what is your why, right? We all have something different that is particular to us, that motivates us, right? In talking about this concept, Simon Sinek says Martin Luther King, right? He didn't lead with the "I have a plan" speech. He said, "I have a dream," right? It wasn't the how, it was the why. And the why then speaks to the what that begins to inform the how. And so, again, another great book. If nothing else, just go watch the video. It will begin to get your mind going in the direction of, how do I begin to discover my own why? And so for me, this is a picture of my family. And my family is not particularly my why, but I think they represent my why. Because my family represents in this life my greatest blessing, the greatest gift that I have, to get to be a husband to my wife, Julie, a father to our 5 kids here that are pictured. And so I want to take those gifts and I want to use those gifts to hopefully be a blessing and a gift to other people, right? To not allow those to terminate on myself, right? And so the point is to take the gifts and the abilities that I've been given and then to use those and to extend those to other people so that they can flourish in their gifts. That's my why, right? And so then how does all of that come together for us as we begin to try to discover, what is it that I want to do? Look in, look out, look up. At the intersection of these 3 things, these 3 questions that we just kind of walked through, you begin to get some clarity on, hey, here's what I might want to do. Now, what about money, right? Because we're here, we're talking about work, and the reality is that you've got to make money in order to be able to have a job, right? One of the things that we talk about at 49 is that money and business is like breathing and living. So what do I mean by that? So you have to breathe in order to be able to live, certainly, right? But nobody would really want to live simply to breathe. That wouldn't be a great life if the whole purpose of your life was simply to breathe. And it's kind of the same thing with money and business. As long as you are kind of in business and your goal is to make a profit, you've got to be able to make a profit in order to have a sustainable business. But at the same time, you shouldn't do work and do business exclusively for the purpose of making money. And it's kind of that same relationship, right? And so that's one thing when it comes to money. The other thing is I would simply tell you, does it drive your economic engine? So what do I mean by that? It's not as though, hey, is this going to make me a lot of money? If that's not what is most important to you, that's great. That is okay. But you want to make sure that your chosen field of endeavor, maybe not today, but over time, as you work your way up in that chosen field of endeavor, it will be able to produce enough money, enough income to drive your economic engine, whatever that might be. And so it's an important question to ask. And I think as you kind of look at, wait, what's out there? Hey, what is not even necessarily today, but over time, what kind of income does this particular career, what does that look like? And does that match what my goals are from an income standpoint, knowing that the purpose of work is not exclusively to make money, similar to how the purpose of living is not exclusively to breathe. Make sense? Awesome. Well, we're going to transition here a little bit to, okay, so you've given me a bunch of questions to ask, right? And things to think about. Now, how do I begin to go find this opportunity? But before I go to that part, any questions on anything we've covered so far? All right. Well, then we will keep rolling. We're about halfway through. Just got about 20 minutes left or so. Okay, so how do you find it? So another book, this is by a guy named Bob Bodine. Bob Bodine is actually one of the most successful placement guys. Terrence, you know who he is? Okay, yep, because he's in the field of athletics. And so he places a lot of ADs, head coaches, all kinds of people in the athletic industry. And he wrote a book, and again, this book's a little bit older, but the name of the book is The Power of Who. And the idea here is that you already know everybody that you need to know. And so as you begin to go out and think through, how do I go find what it is that I want to do? Man, each one of you probably has a more broad network of people than you realize, right? People that have watched you as you've grown up and as you've excelled and as you've done some incredible things in athletics. These people want to help you, right? They want to be sources of wisdom to you where they can be. So maybe even as you begin to go through this framework, it's talking to a few people that you already know, maybe back in your hometown, parents, friends, whatever the case may be, mentors along the way, and saying, here's what I'm thinking. Number one, what kind of jobs would you think that I should be looking at? And then number two, who do you know in those fields of endeavor that perhaps I can just sit down with and have a conversation with? So the whole purpose of this slide is that, especially for collegiate athletes, you'll have such an incredible network of people that are cheering for you, that want to see you succeed. Don't be afraid to use and to leverage that network. There's another book's not listed here, but it's by a world-renowned psychiatrist, Meg Jay, and she works with people in their 20s. And Meg, she came and spent some time with 49 earlier this year, and was able to have dinner with her, and she's incredible. But she talks so much about the power of weak ties. And weak ties is a reference to relationships. So strong ties is like your family and all of that. Those are the people that you call, if you're broken down on the side of the road and you need some help. But your weak ties are people perhaps that you don't necessarily have as strong of a relational connection to, but science and studies show that your weak ties will help you in these types of things more than you realize. And so don't be afraid to leverage those weak ties. Okay. So, whoops, here we go. Next. It's interesting. I've, been doing this type of presentation now for a long time and talked to athletes at all different schools all across the country. And one of the common things that I hear from athletes, because one of the things that I felt is that you feel like you're at a little bit of a disadvantage, right? From the standpoint of, hey, I haven't had those internships because I've been too busy prepping for, I've been in season, right? Or during the summer I'm on campus and I'm working out, whatever the case may be. And so maybe I don't have the job experiences that some of my peers do with the same major. Nothing could be further from the truth, because you've had incredible experience that has prepared you for the working world more than you can realize, by way of your experience as a collegiate athlete. And so these are some of the things that I believe college athletics provides kind of a crucible for, a training ground for, that as you talk to prospective employers, speaking to these things in the ways in which sports has allowed you to grow in leadership, the ability to be a part of a team, the competitive aspect of things, the willingness to work hard, gritty. Y'all can read these. I don't have to read them all for you, but I wanted to give you some things just to talk about as you visit with prospective employers. And don't be afraid to connect how your experience as an athlete has refined these particular skills, because as an employer, I can tell you these are things that we love and that we look for, and that we want to see in candidates, right? And your experience playing sports in college, and certainly at an institution like TCU, is an incredible proving ground for this. Now, there's one last thing that I think is unique about college sports. It's not that other people haven't proven this in major ways, but every athlete, in my opinion, has done this and knows what this means. And it is a huge, attractive quality that employers will look for. Now, it's on my next screen, and Liv and I were talking about, hey, how do we at least say thank you for letting us take an hour of your time? So we've got a gift card, $100 gift card. And here's what we're going to do. You got to drop it in the chat. Everybody gets to take a guess. It's on the next screen. What is one thing? And the first person to get it right in the chat will get the gift card. And if nobody gets it right, I don't know, we'll do a random drawing or something. But we'll give this a shot.
No,
Drop it in the chat.
get it. They have to get it, Kyle.
They have to get it. Otherwise, we get to keep the gift card.
Yeah, we enjoy dinner.
That's right. That's right. So what is the one thing that you think as a collegiate athlete you have demonstrated, perhaps not more than, but it's an obvious quality about the athletic experience? I don't know if anybody's going to get it. And I only see one person. Okay, there's a second check. Critical thinking, yes. Dedication. Time management, yes. Perseverance and consistency, yes. Well, this is going to be tough because everybody's a little bit close.
They're all really good, too.
They're all good. Maybe this was a bad idea. I don't know. It was like $500. I don't know. But here we go. Here's what I'd say. It's the athlete's trade-off. You have chosen growth over comfort, right? And so this is, Angela Duckworth wrote a whole book called Grit a few years ago that was really popular. And there's a grittiness. People that are successful, a common denominator is a grittiness. And when you think about the practices, the long hours, the managing your classwork with whatever the demands of your team are, you have chosen to lean into those things for your development over the comfort of whatever else was available to you, right? And I think that if you can speak to that in particular, that you understand what that means, and that you have demonstrated that repeatedly at the highest level, which each of you have by way of your presence here, that is something that's really going to impress and resonate with prospective employers. I know it does for me, and something I'd be like, you're hired. So that is, yeah, it's discipline. But But that is to me, one of the biggest trade-offs that athletes make. And I think it's a powerful thing. So the big idea from all of that is, hey, you are at such a unique advantage as a collegiate athlete. Employers love working with collegiate athletes. Don't for a second think in any way that experience has impeded you in your pursuit of what it is that you want to do for work. All right, so we talked a little bit about, okay, how do I begin to figure out what it is that I want to do? How do I begin to go out and find it and leverage some of those relationships that I have, the network that I have? And then how do I leverage my experiences, showcase my skills as an athlete to prospective employers once I begin to start to interview for these different things? Next, we're going to talk a little bit about what are some of the traps that we see, not only 20 somethings that join us, but just people in general that are out there in the working world that we see people fall into. But before we go that, any questions, be either in the chat or over the mic that anybody has on anything I've covered so far? Right, we'll keep trucking. All right. So there's a few. We're going to talk in particular about three big traps. So the first one is busyness. And this is an interesting timeline. This is actually taken from a book that I'll reference here in just a second. But there's a quote here by a 19th century psychologist, Carl Jung, and he said, "Hurry isn't of the devil, it is the devil." And so what is this timeline designed to represent? Well, in 1370, the first public clock was established in Germany. So there you go. There's a little history fun fact. Then in 1879, so that was the first time that time there was an order to time, right? Was through that clock. And then in 1879, we had the light bulb. Now, what's unique about the light bulb as it relates to busyness, the average American used to sleep at 11 hours a night, but now we've got lights. We got lights everywhere. And so we are getting less and less sleep. And so there's a lot of wonderful things about electricity, don't get me wrong, but I'm just speaking to how these innovations have had an accelerating degree of pace to our busyness. Then we had all sorts of massive advancements in labor-saving devices that occurred in the 20th century, from transportation, the ability to travel across the globe, things like the typewriter, the dishwasher, right? You don't have to, so it freed up all this time. In fact, I was reading, there's this little quote here. There's a Senate study that was done in the 80s that projected that it was done in the 60s, and it projected that in the 80s, the average American would be working for only 22 hours a week, 27 hours a year. And that obviously is not come to fruition. So what have we done with all of that time that has been freed up as we have continued to innovate? We've just filled it with more things. We filled it with more work. We've increased the pace at which we continue to run. And then, of course, everything changed in 2007 with the iPhone. It has absolutely redefined what it means as part of the human experience in the developed, and for that matter, even in the underdeveloped world. And so now, and I'm not the guy that's like, hey, social media is the devil. That's Carl Jung. No, I'm just saying that there's more opportunity for distraction and busyness and noise that is all around us, more so than ever before. It's crazy. Different studies are out there. This one in particular says the average iPhone user touches their phone almost 2,700 times a day. So we see it, and there's actually this thing called hurry sickness that people who study such things have come out with. And these are the symptoms of hurry sickness. And we see people fall into this trap all the time. I fall into it. You can read them on the right-hand side, but some of them: irritability, hypersensitivity, restlessness, overworking. That's a big one. And we see it because people are just like, I got to keep going. I got to keep going. And they become agitated. And we especially see it. Everybody talks about how people don't work as hard. There's some grinders out there that are part of 49, and it's part of hurry sickness. and grinders out there in the world in general. Escapist behaviors, it can start to turn unhealthy, right? It can escape to other things for distraction because you can't just sit in the stillness. And then all other types of symptoms as well. One of the symptoms when I was putting this together that I heard, it's not listed here, but one of the ways you know is if you've got hurry sickness is if you're at the grocery store and you change lines to try and check out faster, or if you're at the parking at the red light and you start counting the number of cars that are ahead of you. And I think the third thing was if you multitask, but then you forget what task you were trying to do. So it's all around us, basically. And we are in an environment and in a world that is fertile ground for this hurry sickness more than ever before. And so what do we do about it? Well, I'm not here to unpack all of that. But there's this famous quote by a gentleman by the name of Dallas Willard who says, you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry. And so there's a book by a gentleman named John Mark Comer. He wrote that says The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Much of the stuff that I just talked about comes from that book. It is excellent. And then another guy, Greg McCune, wrote a book called Essentialism. This has reshaped the way that I know our family kind of patterns and orients our day. It is so good and has been so impactful to, I know, a lot of people. And it's all, both of these are just designed to help push back on some of this hurry sickness. And so I know you're incredibly busy right now. You've got a ton going on as it is. That doesn't stop when you step into the working world. And so having a framework to begin to push back on that hurriedness is a good way, a healthy way to try and avoid that trap. Next, second trap, that we see people falling into is playing, and this especially for athletes, is playing a finite game. And so what I mean by that, yes, absolutely, be happy to. What I mean by that is there's kind of two games, right? There's a finite game and then there's an infinite game. And a finite game is very much like what y'all do, right? When you're playing sports, there's known players, there's fixed rules, there's an agreed upon objective, and there's winners and then there's losers, right? And many people approach business this way, that it is a finite game, right? There's winners, there's losers, right? And I got to win, right? And there are many competitions, right? Many MINI competitions that happen, within any business. But business itself is not a finite game, at least the people who do it well, because the finite game leads to a sense of burnout. It leads to a sense of ultimately flaming out of whatever it is. And we see people, especially competitive people who have sports in their background. I know for me, I did this. They approach their professional career with a finite approach and not an infinite approach. And so there's another book, right? The Infinite Game, from which this comes. And in an infinite game, the rules are, can change. They can evolve over time. We just looked at a timeline, right, of history. And so we can see that things evolve and change over time, and you have to be willing to adapt. There's known, but there's also unknown players in an infinite game. And whereas in a finite game, the objective is to beat your opponent, right? There's a winner and there's a loser. The objective in an infinite game is to stay in the game, right? And so there may be days where you feel like, man, I got it handed to me, but stay in the game, right? The only way to lose the infinite game is to quit. And so we encourage young people all the time, hey, we're not playing a finite game here. We're playing an infinite game. And, we want to help you sharpen your skills and continue to develop. And yeah, you're going to have highs and yeah, you're going to have lows. But the goal is to stay in the game. And so it's a different mindset and a different approach and a different muscle, honestly, to flex. So first trap is busy or hurry sickness. The second trap is one of approaching work with a finite mindset versus an infinite mindset. The last one is one of identity. Now, two people, right? These are kind of some old school references here. I'm showing my age. Two people here that are pictured, both musicians. On the left-hand side, there is Madonna, as you can see, and she's credited with this really interesting quote. And what she says here is that, well, I'll just read it. All of my will has always been to conquer some horrible feeling of inadequacy. I'm always struggling with that fear. I push past one spell and out of it and discover myself as a special human being. And I get to another stage, right, as a musician, and think I'm mediocre and I'm uninteresting. And then I have to work myself out of that. My drive in life is from the horrible fear of being mediocre, right? Now, what's interesting about this quote, not to get like way too philosophical, it's almost 8 o'clock on a Thursday night. There's nothing wrong with the pursuit of excellence, right? So nobody wants to be mediocre, but you can see that she is beginning to define herself by her music, by her performance, by her vocation, right? And we see that all the time, especially as athletes, right? I think there's something to be said for, in so many ways, you've been defined by your athletic achievements, right? And you can, if it can take it on an unhealthy level of almost becoming an identity. Well, that continues in work, right? And your identity can be one of work. Now, on the right-hand side is another quote. And here it says, during the year 1957, I experienced, by the grace of God, a spiritual awakening, which was to lead me to a richer, fuller, and more productive life. At that time, in gratitude, I humbly asked to be given the means and privilege to make others happy through my music. I feel this has been granted through his grace. So an entirely different way to approach work. Anybody know who the musician is on the right-hand side? A Love Supreme. It is, I just had a brain fart. I can't remember who it is. Oh goodness, it's going to come to me in a second. But anyway, but the point here is that it is approaching work, knowing kind of a sense of identity that is outside of work. And when that happens, then your work just becomes work. Your work doesn't become a means by which you define yourself. And that's one of the biggest traps that we see 20-year-olds. And I would say even, I know for me, especially as an athlete, it's easy to fall into, as to where you become defined by the success or lack thereof at work. And so the last trap, and just the encouragement, and we'll get you out of here, is not to define yourself by what you do, but do what you do because of how you find yourself. So don't allow your identity to get too wrapped up in the work itself. Okay, so in sum, just kind of wrapping it all up here, we talked a little bit about what to do and some questions to ask, look in, look out, look up, how to go find it, leverage the power of who, how does money fit into that equation? Then how do you take the experiences that you've had as an athlete, leverage those for potential employers? And as you begin to step into the working world, what are some of the traps that we see 20-somethings very easily, and I can say even 40-somethings very easily fall into? And what are some thoughts and ideas about how to avoid some of those traps? Busyness, infinite versus finite game, and matters of identity. Well, I appreciate y'all taking the time. That is all that we have for this evening. So if there aren't any other questions.
We got a question, Kyle.
What is it?
From Sam. She asked, how do you still get everything done if you don't multitask or hurry?
Really good question. So that book, Essentialism, speaks to that quite a bit. And there's some really, really good principles that are in there. I would say probably the biggest principle is having a level of intentionality with your time. And so my wife and I, we've got 5 kids. Our oldest kid is 17. He'll be 17 this weekend. Our youngest kid is 9. And so obviously pretty busy with work. And then they're all doing stuff. And then my wife, she also works part-time. She's a nurse. And so there's just a lot going on. So every weekend, we sit down and we have a meeting and we plan out everything. And I know that sounds lame, right? To plan everything out because it feels like, oh, there's no spontaneity or anything like that. But it actually, by having everything planned out, it gives us freedom to have spontaneity because we know, we meal plan, we plan, who's taking the kids where, depending on the date, what games we have to be at. I coach some of the young kids team, so what practice, like all the things. It's a whole lot of planning, and that book Essentialism was huge for us to help. And it doesn't mean that we still don't have to work really, really hard. That's certainly part of it, but it helps with the frenetic kind of pace at which life can sometimes take if you get out ahead of your schedule versus it taking control of you. And all of those things, by the way, as I say all that, I don't have any of that mastered. It's just trying to get a little bit better, in those areas, and to help, because absolutely there's still going to be times where you feel like your schedule is controlling you. But these are some ideas that have been helpful for us. Great question, though.
Yeah, one thing I'll add to that, Kyle, just for a different perspective, because I'm not a mom or I don't have kids or a spouse yet. And so I think just to add on to that, like planning is huge, but also just being very intentional about what you put on your schedule and follow through with it. I have on my schedule now when I have to stop working, and it's a work in progress for me right now, because even being a single female working in these like grind years, it can be really easy to just work nonstop and start to drain myself in the other pieces of my life that is super important. And so there's definitely weeks where you have to compromise certain things, but making sure that you are not compromising the things that are important, whether that is your faith or your family or the relationships in your life. And so being very intentional with your calendar, not just putting it on the calendar and then doing something else, is a challenge and something I'm working on, but something I'd also add to that.
Awesome. John Coltrane was the musician. I knew it was from the liner notes from A Love Supreme, but I'm like, John Coltrane's name just escaped my mind. Yeah, there's another question.
Yeah. How did you start your business if you didn't know what you wanted to do outside of college? Did you get any help or guidance? I can speak to it. I think you can speak to it, Kyle. I think we both have very unique perspectives.
Totally.
I'll start, Sam. That's a great question. Going back to his Kyle's talk in terms of looking in, that was something that I did, I feel like, throughout my 4 years, and in terms of what I wanted to do in terms of a career actually changed too many times, in my opinion. But I went in wanting to teach because when I looked in and looked at what I was gifted in, one, I love children. Two, I love talking to people. And three, I was really good at being able to communicate. And this idea of breaking down really complicated concepts into simple things that people can understand got me super excited. And so I thought I wanted to go into education. That's what I pursued at TCU. Then comes end of sophomore year, and I'm like, man, I'm really creative, and I feel like that gifting could really take me somewhere. And so in terms of people I let in during that season of my life, I actually touched base with my honors advisor. I touched base with people in like outside of college. I worked 5 different jobs. I talked to the owner of a cycle bar studio that I worked at. I talked to business owners. I talked to people in my life that really mentored me. And that was when I pivoted more towards marketing, because I didn't want to spend an extra year at TCU. As much as I love TCU, it's way too expensive. And so they were like, oh, you should do strategic communication. You love to talk, you love to be creative. That could lead to advertising. So ended up switching there. I think in terms of my senior year, that's when I started to look in even deeper and even look up. Faith plays a really big role in my life. And when the pandemic hit, it was really hard because I realized, man, I wanted a career that was really impactful, but more importantly, in direct alignment with who I am as a person and who I wanted to become. And what I found in the advertising industry, I mean, I love advertising. I still feel like I advertise in what I do now. was that it was really hard to work and contract out for specific companies when it didn't align with my values. I felt like I was compromising what I believed in. And so when I learned more about 49, that was when the values alignment really clicked for me. But in terms of the actual role, I did not know what I would be doing. I did not know financial planning was a career in itself. And so that's where I heavily recommend leaning on people. So mentors, family, individuals in your life that really care for you in terms of engaging them in the conversation. But then two, looking for a company that very much values mentorship and coaching. Because the reason why I am here today, the reason why I've experienced the success that I did in a career, not being a finance major, not necessarily being interested in finance, but just knowing I wanted to help people, were because of folks like Kyle and my managing partner of LA and different individuals that are like, hey, I can't coach someone how to be a good person, but I can coach someone if they're willing to learn. And so that was just kind of a long drawn story on what took me to what I'm doing today. But hopefully that gives you honestly, confidence and assurance. If you don't know exactly what you want to do, that's amazing. You know what? Lean on people that really care for you to help you kind of get through that season. But Kyle, I'll let you speak to that as well.
Yeah, no, that's really, really good. So for me, when I came out of school, I didn't know at all what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to, find something that I think I might like. And at the time, was kind of money motivated. And so I got into institutional investment. So I didn't start doing financial advising straight out of college. And I did that for about 3 years. And it was okay. It was so I worked with big hedge funds, private equity groups, that kind of stuff. But the challenge for me, and I didn't start looking for jobs till probably April of my senior year, so I was kind of late to the game. And so the challenge for me was I was working 50, 60, 70 hours a week, but I couldn't connect how that work that I was doing was having an impact on people's lives. It was purely about making money. And so I was like, I don't, there's more than that. So I started to look at a lot of different things, and I started to talk to mentors and other people, and said, hey, looking for something still. I like finance, but I want to help people. And that's how I landed in financial advising. And so this is also interesting, a part about the story. I kind of wanted to get to the bulk of the presentation. I left a lot of this out. The idea for the name 49 Financial and building a company around this idea of teamwork, that originated for me in 2005. So a long time ago. And it wasn't until 2013. Well, I met our business partner, who's now our CEO, Travis Penfield, in 2012. So it was 7 years of doing the work and learning the business before even the opportunity to begin to pursue, building this thing called 49, took shape. And then it wasn't until about 2013, 14, we started to grow it and build it. And it's just evolved from there. So it's a long journey, and that's kind of goes back to that infinite game. I'm so thankful that I had, the experience coming straight out of school, then the experience of, 7 years of waiting and learning the business before we actually started to build it and grow it. So it takes time. Excellent questions. Thank you for that. Cool. Well, let's see here. We got 2 minutes. Any other questions before we hop off? All right. So we'll get you a list of some of those books that I referenced, because there's a lot of really good principles that are come out of that. And obviously nothing that I talk about is any sort of an original idea. It's things that we picked up over the years through people much smarter. So love to share those books. Really do appreciate your time, your attentiveness. And if we can be of help in any way on your journey, feel free to reach out to Liv in particular. And yeah, Terrence, thanks so much for putting this together and for allowing us to spend time with y'all this evening.
Absolutely. Well, Kyle and Liv, thank you so much. I see lots of thank yous in the chat from our student athletes. We appreciate you, Liv and Kyle, for joining us. So student athletes, thank you for joining us. This has been very insightful, very encouraging, very inspirational. I love the power of food. That book is on my desk in my office right now. I read it 2 times already.
Oh, nice.
So
Yeah,
I love that book. So
yeah,
that's
it's powerful.
Very powerful. The power of who you already know, everyone you need to know. That's
right.
really powerful for athletes. So again, Liv and Kyle, thank you so much. And for our student athletes, I'm going to drop a link in the chat here. This is your attendance and credit link. So this is a survey that share with us how this session has impacted you. So when you fill this out, this is how you receive credit, your Horned Frogs for Life credit for attending our session this evening. So on behalf of the Career Center and Student Athlete Development, thank you so much to everyone. And I'll hang out for a few minutes if you have any questions for me. But thank you so much, and go Frogs.
Go Frogs. See you guys.
Go Frogs. Thank you, guys.
Thank y'all.
Thank you so much.